How are we doing, everyone? Today we're going to look at inequalities, just the basics of inequalities. What are the signs? What type of points do we plot when graphing them on number lines? So, we have the four basic inequality signs up here, and these are always what they are. We always know that this first one in the upper left-hand corner up here, we know that this is always known as a greater than sign. That's what this one is right here. The one below it is just, we simply call it a less than sign. Now, a lot of you before, at least I remember back when I was in school, in elementary school, we talked about greater than or less than signs as, I remember especially in second grade, we would go through, have some numbers up here, and then ask to actually draw and make the little alligator. We said, oh look, 3 is greater than 2, because the alligator obviously wants to eat the bigger number. Now that's a very elementary approach to it. What we're going to look at today, though, is why this is always a greater than sign is because of the reason of how you read. And we know that we read from left to right. So if I am writing this statement up here, I would read it as 4 is greater than 3 because I'm reading it from left to right. If I reversed it and still made it the same statement, I'm looking and reading this from left to right again. I'm saying 3 is less than 4. So that's why this is always a greater than and this is always less than. Now that's also true with the second one up here, greater than or equal to. This right here is always greater than or equal to. Same reason because we read left to right. And this one right here is always a less than or equal to for the exact same reason. Now the only difference with these two inequalities is what they mean. If I have some inequality that says x is less than 3, the question that we always ask is 3 an answer? Well, ask yourself, is 3 less than 3? No, it's not. So that would actually be incorrect. So we want all values for x that are less than 3. So you could have 2.9 is less than 3. You could have 2 is less than 3, so on and so forth. The difference over here, obviously, is that little equal sign. And that means something to us because we can have a 3 be greater than or equal to 3. So that's the only difference between those signs. Now what that means for us then is when we graph these, they actually have two different points. Now some of you last year may remember this, some of you may not. With the two different points, we have two different points. One called an open point, and that is only for either greater than or less than. And then a closed point is greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. The key word here with a closed point are these two right here, this equal to. Okay? Those are your key words to figure out what a closed point is. And you remember, or you should remember what these actually look like. An open point simply is an open circle. And a closed point is a filled in circle. And what that means is that when I plot this point on a number line, which that's the next series of our event here, when I plot this on a number line, this closed point actually represents and says that, hey, you know what? 3 is equal to 3, so that is an answer that I have. Over here, this is that question, well, hey, 3 is not greater than 3, so I can't actually have that as an answer. Okay, so now we're going to graph a couple of these inequalities. Here's how it looks. First thing I see right here, I have x is less than 2. So if I don't have a number line to actually graph this on, I can just create my own number line. And that's what I'm going to do for all of these today. Tomorrow in class, you're going to have number lines present where you can actually figure out where 2 is, where -1 is, etc., etc. But I'm just going to create a number line here. So, therefore, if I create my own number line, I have to dictate where 0 is. And 0 is always in the middle. It separates our positive and negative numbers. Further, I have to figure out where 2 is. And this is a simple one where I can just plot, roughly, there's the number 2. Now, going back to what we have up here, if I read this left to right, I know that this sign right here is a less than sign, meaning is 2 an answer? No, it's not. So therefore, I'm going to come up here and notice that, hey, less than, I have an open point. So I'm actually going to plot an open point at 2, or an open circle. Okay? I'll do that in a different color so we can see it a little better. And now, what I'm going to do is figure out the direction, because I want all the numbers that are less than 2. So we know that this is incorrect. But if I want a number less than 2, x, could it be 1? Well, is 1 less than 2? That works. What about 0? That's a number. Is 0 less than 2? That works. Is -4 less than 2? Yep. Is negative 28 less than 2? Yep. So if all of these are answers, we have to show this, because I don't think you want to sit here and list all the numbers that are less than 2 to negative infinity. The way we show this is by shading. And anytime I see a less than, if I see, oh look here, less than, the numbers are always to the left. It's always left. So how do we show that on here? I have an open point at 2 because that is my less than 2, and then I shade every single number to the left. That's a basic graphing of an inequality. So, moving on to the next one. I'm going to erase all this stuff over here. And now, same concept, but this time now I'm looking at n is greater than or equal to negative 1. So I'm going to draw my number line. I'm going to figure out where 0 is. It's directly in the middle. And then where is negative 1? Well, it's one space to the left of 0, so I'm going to plot it there. And now I look at the inequality sign. I read it again. N is greater than or equal to, keyword, equal to. Therefore, closed point. I'm going to plot a closed point at negative 1. So here's my closed point at negative 1. And now I figure out where the shading goes. Well, where are the numbers that are greater than negative 1? Okay? We know that less than was to the left. Therefore, if I see the words greater, and more specifically greater than, those are always to the right. Always. Where are the bigger numbers on a number line? Well, look over here. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. Are they all greater than or equal to negative 1? Yes, they are. So all I do now is I shade on my number line all of these numbers to the right. Last two inequalities. Now, I have a rule with solving inequalities. Graphing inequalities. My basic rule for you is the first two were pretty straightforward. Why? Because it was just an x, it's less than 3. That's a pretty simple one. We know where to graph that. Difference between those first two and these over here are I see the variable first in my inequality. So that's the rule, and make sure you write that down. It is to write your variable first. I'm just going to abbreviate a little bit. So make sure that variable is going to come first in this inequality. What I mean is that I see 18 is less than k. So if I wanted to put k first and 18 second, what phrase would I say then? Well, I always teach this as, hey, this is the little alligator, make the teeth, yada, 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 and it's eating the bigger number. So if 18 is less than k, that means that this little alligator is eating that k right there. That means k is greater than 18. And so, same thing for this fourth one over here. If negative 25 is greater than or equal to m, and I write m first because I want my variable to come first, well then m, here my little alligator is eating negative 25, so therefore I still make it eat negative 25. So therefore m is less than or equal to negative 25. Now once that's done, the graphing is exactly the same. So again, in both cases, draw my number line, put 0 in the middle, figure out obviously where positive and 18 and negative 25 is. So positive 18, that's going to be somewhere to the right of 0. And then negative 25 is going to be to the left of 0. Obviously, this is just a rough sketch, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And now I look at my inequality signs and figure out what type of point are we plotting. K is greater than 18. That's an open point because it does not have these key words equal to. So I plot an open point there. At negative 25, m is less than or equal to negative 25. Hey, there's a key word, equal to. So that is a closed point. And now I look for direction. Greater than, where are all the numbers that are greater than? Always to the right. So I shade this graph all the way to the right. And then less than. I don't care that this is a negative number. Less than values, all the numbers less than negative 25, always to the left. So I go up there and I shade all numbers to the left of negative 25. So what you're going to do now, you're going to go into the Google form on Google Classroom. Your keyword today is just inequality. all lowercase. That is your keyword or password to get into the assignment for tonight. Okay, good luck. Do the best you can.